It was a moonless night, and the road stretched before me like a dark serpent winding its way through the desolate countryside. I had always been cautious about driving at night, but I had no other choice. I needed to get to the town on the other side before dawn, and the only route available was this eerie, deserted highway. As I turned on my headlights, the road seemed to absorb the feeble light, leaving me cocooned in darkness. The isolation and silence were suffocating, broken only by the low hum of the engine and the occasional hoot of an owl in the distance. I tried to keep my mind focused on the task at hand, but an inexplicable sense of dread gnawed at me. The road seemed to stretch on forever, its path vanishing into the unknown. I glanced at the clock. It was 2:00 a.m. I had been driving for what felt like hours, and yet I seemed to have made little progress. As my eyes strained to penetrate the darkness, a flicker of movement caught my attention in the rearview mirror. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly looked back, but there was nothing there. Just the empty road fading into the abyss behind me. Shaking off the unease, I chalked it up to fatigue and continued driving. But as the miles passed, the feeling of being watched intensified. It was as if unseen eyes were following my every move, lurking just beyond my line of sight. The headlights cast fleeting glimpses of the surrounding landscape, revealing dilapidated houses, their windows boarded up, and eerie silhouettes of long-forgotten trees. The place felt haunted, as if the shadows themselves were alive and waiting to ensnare me. As I pressed on, a thick fog began to creep across the road, adding to the already eerie atmosphere. I slowed down, straining to see through the mist, but it seemed to swallow the world whole. The fog seemed unnatural, as if it had manifested from the darkest corners of my mind. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the fog, standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure was shrouded in darkness, their features obscured. Fear gripped me, and I fumbled to lock the car doors. "Is someone there? Do you need help?" I called out, my voice shaky. No response. The figure remained still, a silent sentinel watching me from the fog. I could feel its malevolence, and a chill ran down my spine. Panic surged within me, urging me to turn around and flee, but I was frozen in place. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone to call for help, but as I glanced at the screen, I saw that there was no signal. The isolation of the desolate highway had severed my connection to the outside world. The figure began to move, its slow, deliberate steps sending waves of terror through me. It advanced towards my car, each step shrouded in the swirling mist. As it drew nearer, I could make out its eyes, two glowing orbs that pierced through the darkness. My instincts screamed at me to drive away, to escape this nightmarish apparition, but my body refused to respond. I was trapped, paralyzed by fear as the figure reached my car. And then, in a voice that echoed with a haunting familiarity, the figure spoke. "You should not have come here." Those words were enough to jolt me out of my stupor. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I found the strength to turn the ignition and slam my foot on the gas pedal. The tires screeched as the car shot forward, leaving the figure behind in the fog. But the dread in my heart did not dissipate. It clung to me like a vengeful specter, haunting my every thought. The fog seemed to grow thicker, obscuring my vision, and the road became treacherous. I tried to focus on the path ahead, but the shadows seemed to dance in my peripheral vision. Each passing second felt like an eternity, and the road seemed endless, leading me deeper into the heart of darkness. Suddenly, the fog parted, revealing a ghastly sight ahead. A twisted wreck of a car lay in the middle of the road, its mangled frame an omen of tragedy. The sight filled me with dread, and I braked hard to avoid colliding with the wreckage. As I sat there, breathing heavily, I noticed movement in my rearview mirror once again. My heart sank as I saw the figure emerging from the fog behind me, its glowing eyes fixed on me with malicious intent. With a surge of panic, I put the car into reverse and maneuvered around the wreckage, desperate to escape the apparition's clutches. The figure followed relentlessly, its unearthly presence engulfing me. In my desperation, I swerved onto a side road, hoping to lose the specter in the labyrinth of darkness. But the road seemed to lead nowhere, twisting and turning in unpredictable ways. The fog clung to me like a malevolent force, and the figure was never far behind. As the night wore on, I found myself disoriented, lost in an otherworldly maze. The figure's relentless pursuit had become a nightmarish dance, and I knew that there was no escape. My only companion was the haunting darkness, and my only hope was to survive until the dawn. The sun finally rose, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. I found myself on the main highway, safe and sound, but the night's horrors had left an indelible mark on my soul. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something truly malevolent, something that should never have crossed the boundary between our world and the shadows. I vowed never to return to that desolate highway, to steer clear of the darkness that lurked in the night. But even as I tried to move on, I knew that the memory of that terrifying journey would haunt me forever. A chilling reminder that some roads are best left untraveled, and that sometimes the darkness can take on a life of its own. In the days that followed that harrowing night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolent figure still lingered, a haunting presence watching me from the shadows. Every creak of the house, every flicker of the lights, and every rustle of the wind outside made me jump, fearing that the darkness had found a way to follow me home. Sleep became elusive as nightmares of the figure and the desolate highway invaded my dreams. I sought solace in the daylight, but even the sun couldn't banish the lingering sense of dread that had taken root in my mind. Determined to find answers and regain my peace of mind, I started delving into local folklore and the history of the desolate highway. The more I searched, the darker the tales became. The road had earned a reputation as a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin, and it was believed that malevolent spirits lurked there, preying on unsuspecting travelers. I reached out to those who lived near the haunted highway, hoping to find someone who could shed light on my experience. Among the locals, I discovered an elderly woman named Eliza, whose family had lived in the area for generations. Eliza's eyes widened with recognition as I described the figure and the nightmarish events that had unfolded on the road. "You've encountered the Phantom Wanderer," she whispered, her voice quivering with fear. "They say it's the vengeful spirit of a lost traveler who was led astray by malevolent forces and became trapped in the darkness, doomed to haunt the highway forever." As she recounted the legend, a chill ran down my spine. According to the story, the Phantom Wanderer would appear to those who dared to travel the desolate highway at night, seeking to ensnare their souls and add them to its spectral ranks. Determined to break free from the grasp of the Phantom Wanderer, I asked Eliza if there was any way to appease the vengeful spirit. She hesitated, cautioning me that meddling with the supernatural could be dangerous. However, seeing the desperation in my eyes, she agreed to share an ancient ritual said to pacify vengeful spirits. Eliza guided me through the ritual, involving candles, incense, and chants in an old, forgotten language. With every word spoken and every gesture made, I felt a shift in the energy around me, as if the boundary between our world and the ethereal realm was being temporarily lifted. As the ritual concluded, I waited, holding my breath, unsure if anything had changed. But then, I felt a sensation of weightlessness, as if an unseen burden had been lifted from my shoulders. The feeling of being watched faded, and the suffocating dread began to lift. Eliza's eyes met mine, and she nodded, confirming that the ritual had worked. "The Phantom Wanderer should no longer trouble you," she said, her voice filled with relief. Gratitude swelled within me, but the memory of that night still haunted my thoughts. I knew that the road had forever changed me, leaving scars that time might never fully heal. In the months that followed, I moved on with my life, trying to put the horror of that night behind me. But I couldn't forget the lesson I had learned, that some roads held ancient secrets, and that the darkness could be more than just a lack of light. It could be a living, malevolent force. From that day on, I became cautious of the places I traveled and the roads I ventured down. The supernatural had crossed into my reality, and I couldn't ignore its existence any longer. As time passed, I developed a newfound appreciation for the thin veil that separated the living from the dead. I began to study the mysteries of the supernatural, learning to protect myself from malevolent spirits and understand the boundary between our world and the ethereal realm. Though the memory of that night haunted me, it also fueled my determination to seek answers and help others who had encountered similar malevolent forces. I couldn't erase the past, but I could use it as a driving force to make a difference in the present. In the end, that night on the Desolate Highway changed the course of my life. I had looked into the abyss, and it had looked back, leaving me with a haunting awareness that there was more to the world than met the eye. And as I embarked on my journey into the unknown, I knew that I would always carry the memory of that fateful night, a reminder that the darkness could be both terrifying and enlightening. And that sometimes confronting our deepest fears could lead us to our true selves.